Peasant. You're a peasant in ancient Egypt. You wake up before sunrise because there's already work waiting for you. Your home is small, your clothes are simple, and most of your day is spent working. You might be farming wheat, barley, or vegetables along the Nile, and the food you produce isn't entirely yours. Part of it can go toward taxes, storage, or supporting the people who run the kingdom. You don't have much wealth, you don't have much political power, and becoming rich probably isn't your main concern. Your main concern is making sure your family has enough food. But this isn't the bottom of everything, because there are people above you who live completely different lives. So let's move up the Egyptian social ladder. Farmer. You're still an ordinary Egyptian, but now your life revolves even more heavily around the Nile. The river is everything. It provides water, fertile land, fish, transportation, and the agricultural system that supports the kingdom. During planting and harvesting seasons, your days can be exhausting. You work with simple tools. You depend heavily on the seasons. And when the harvest is good, your entire community benefits. When the harvest is bad, everyone feels it. There are no supermarkets to fall back on. No trucks bringing food from another country. Your survival depends on the land around you. But there's something important about your position. You're not powerless. You have a family. You have a community. You can own personal belongings, and your work is essential to everyone above you. But if you're skilled with your hands instead of the land, your position could change. Craftsman. You're a craftsman in ancient Egypt. Instead of spending most of your day growing food, you're making things other people need. Maybe you're a carpenter, a potter, a metal worker, or a stone worker. Your hands are your greatest asset. You might produce furniture, tools, containers, weapons, or decorations. And if you're particularly skilled, your work could end up in the homes of wealthy Egyptians or inside important temples. But your job isn't easy. Imagine shaping wood or stone with tools that are incredibly basic compared with what we have today. A mistake could ruin hours of work, and some projects could require enormous amounts of physical effort. Still, you've gained something valuable, a specialized skill. And specialized skills can give you a better position in society. But there's another skill that could take you even further: the ability to read and write. Scribe. You're a scribe, and suddenly, your hands aren't doing the hardest physical work. They're writing. This is a big deal, because literacy was highly valuable in ancient Egypt. You could be responsible for recording taxes, tracking supplies, managing property, writing official documents, or working for a temple or government official. Instead of spending your entire day in a field, you might spend it sitting with writing materials, recording information that other people depend on. But becoming a scribe isn't easy. You have to learn a complicated writing system. You have to practice constantly, and you need to remember an enormous amount of information. Your knowledge gives you something that most ordinary workers don't have: access. You can communicate with officials. You can keep records. You can become part of the administration. And from here, you can move even closer to power. Soldier. You're a soldier in ancient Egypt. Your life is completely different now. You're trained to fight. You carry weapons. You guard important locations. And during military campaigns, you may travel far from home. You might use a bow, spear, shield, or other weapons depending on the period. But being a soldier isn't some constant adventure. A lot of military life could involve marching, guarding, carrying equipment, waiting, and dealing with harsh conditions. And when actual fighting happens, it's dangerous. A single mistake can leave you seriously injured or dead. But military service could also give you opportunities for rewards and higher status. And if you're successful enough, you might eventually gain influence. But there's another path to power, and it doesn't require fighting. It requires religion, priest. You're a priest, and your life now revolves around one of the most important institutions in Egyptian society, the temple. Your job isn't simply standing around and praying. You could participate in rituals, maintain sacred spaces, manage offerings, and perform religious duties. And temples could be extremely powerful institutions. They could own land, they could store food, they could employ workers, they could control enormous resources. So being connected to a major temple could give you influence far beyond what an ordinary Egyptian had. But even with that influence, you're still not at the top. Because above priests are people who control something even more powerful: government official. You're a government official. Now your life has changed dramatically. You're no longer simply producing things, you're managing them. You might collect taxes, oversee workers, manage land, organize construction projects, control supplies, or administer an entire region. And now you have something that ordinary Egyptians rarely have: power over other people. Your position can bring wealth, better housing, servants, and access to important members of society. You don't have to spend every day working under the Egyptian sun. Instead, other people may be working because of decisions you make. But there's a problem. The higher you climb, the more valuable your position becomes. And that means more competition, because there are people above you who control even more. Noble. You're a noble in ancient Egypt. Your life is almost unrecognizable compared with the farmer we started with. You may own large amounts of land. You may have servants. You have access to better food, better clothing, and a much more comfortable home. You can have enormous influence over local affairs, and your family connections can open doors that ordinary Egyptians could never reach. But wealth doesn't mean your life is completely carefree. Your position comes with responsibilities. You may have political duties, religious responsibilities, military obligations, and expectations from the royal court. And there's always someone above you, someone whose authority is greater than yours, someone whose name can become part of monuments that survive for thousands of years. Pharaoh. You're the Pharaoh. You are now at the very top of Egyptian society. You aren't simply a wealthy ruler. You are at the center of Egypt's political and religious system. Officials answer to you. Armies fight under your authority. Huge construction projects can be carried out in your name, and your decisions can affect an entire kingdom. You have enormous wealth, servants, guards, palaces, fine food, and access to almost everything Egypt can provide. But there's a catch. Being Pharaoh isn't just luxury. You are expected to maintain order, protect the kingdom, deal with enemies, manage the government, perform religious responsibilities, and keep Egypt stable. If the kingdom suffers, the responsibility ultimately comes back to you. So being Pharaoh might be the highest position, but it certainly isn't the easiest. And there's one final thing you need to understand: the twist. Because ancient Egyptian society wasn't simply a ladder that anyone could climb. For most people, the position they were born into strongly influenced the life they would have. A farmer didn't simply decide to become a noble. A craftsman couldn't just walk into a palace and demand a government position. Education, family, wealth, connections, and opportunity mattered. But every level depended on the others. The farmer produced the food, the craftsman produced the tools, the scribe recorded the information, the soldier protected the kingdom, The priest maintained the religious system. The officials ran the administration. The nobles controlled enormous resources. And the pharaoh stood at the top. So if you had been born in ancient Egypt, your biggest advantage wouldn't necessarily have been intelligence, or strength, or ambition. It would have been something much simpler: where you were born.